Past the superb new pits as we go in car for a pit stop this time. The number 3 Courage is the Lionel Robert, Pascal Fabre, Pierre-Henri Raffanel car. But hear that noise, that sounds like a damaged gearbox to me from the Kramer Run Honda. The number 48 car there grinding to a halt in the main Honda Challenger, the Bouchot Hahn Gachot car, which had qualified in 21st place, and definitely a fairly major problem. Give me a push, he's saying. And there, the number 59 car off. That's the car driven by the very experienced Dutchman Cor Oyser, leading that driving team. And beached up there on the curbing. I mean, the noise that that Honda is making, that sounds to me as if the gearbox is in absolute pieces. As other cars come in along the pit road. Meanwhile, that Porsche in the GT2 class, one of the quicker cars in that class, gets away. And finally, the Honda arrives at the pits where it will be absolutely surrounded by Japanese camera crews. It's Bertrand Gachot there climbing out of the car. So, disappointment for him. Armin Hahn getting in. And a lot of work going on at the back of the car. And, well, it could be quite a long wait there. But there, at 8 o'clock in the evening, the positions, computer telling us the sponsors' names. But the number 1 car, of course, the Toyota of Martini, Irvine and Krosnoff, leading by only just over 2 minutes from the number 36 Baudi, Hurley Hayward, Yannick Dalmas, Porsche, and then the second of the 2 Toyotas, and then the Porsches, and then the 2 Courage Porsches, all very close. What a close Le Mans this is turning out to be. 4 hours in and 3 cars still on the same lap as we have another exciting incident at one of these chicanes on the Mulsanne Straight. And it's Aventuri having a big moment. That's the number 31 car of Almo Copelli, Riccardo Augusta and Michel Krein, and Augusta of the helicopter family. Well, a rural scene out there, and that's one of the great pleasures of Le Mans. It's in a beautiful part of France, and out in the west as the sun starts to set, and there Hans Stuck waits patiently for his next stint. There, Derek Bell at the wheel of the... Oh dear! And that mechanic goes base over apex, and he couldn't do that again if he tried. Well, just look at that Courage right on the ragged edge there. The Pierre-Henri Raffanel, Pascal Fabre, Lionel Robert car, still definitely in the hunt, and running there in the top 6 as now the lights go on. Some of the spectators start to drift away to the many different pleasures and the fairground that's so close to this racetrack. And there you see it. And it all adds to this very special and totally unique atmosphere that we have at Le Mans. The nasty swerves there down towards Tête Rouge corner. That the corner which then takes the cars off along the Mulsanne Straight. And as the night fell, this battle between Porsche, Cougar and Toyota continued. Annie Sullivan comes out of the car. At this stage in the race, it was actually the Georges Fouché, Stephen Ansgar, Bob Wallach car which was leading. But it was always a close run thing, and never more than a minute or so between it. There's the number 1 car, the second of the 2 Toyotas, and there the 35 car in the pits. Lights ablaze, and there the moon. It's going to be a clear night, and the number 1 Toyota and the number 4 Toyota now first and second, then the Courage, but all still very close indeed. By this stage in the Le Mans 24 hours, often there's 3 or 4 laps between the leading contenders, but not the situation. there, Ballas talking to René Arnoux about the various gearbox problems that they were experiencing with the Dodge Viper. Not surprisingly, really, because Dodge are racing in this event for the first time. A private effort as this Corvette, the Boris Side, the third car comes in. This car had been leading the G2 category, and this was a big surprise, heading the various Porsches. And there again you see that fuel and brake pads going in, but that Corvette certainly looking very strong indeed, and well driven by Boris Side, Michel Maisonneuve and Frank Jelinski, the very experienced German racer who's done many Le Mans in the past, and he's very quick indeed. And a great rumbling V8 engine with that Corvette going out, and that was definitely a crowd pleaser, that car. But problems now for the second of the two Courage entries, the Raphaël Fabre-Robert car. And it looks as if that could be terminal, and the car pushed away indeed. Word coming that it is an engine problem, and that car, which had promised so much, which had led the race, seemingly out of the event. There goes the Soul Bugatti in the race, and that up in about 11th place. That's a fine performance. But meanwhile, in the number one garage, that tells it all. Lying in first place, the number one car. After that bit of mopping up in the garage area. Meanwhile, the third of the garages, only two left now. That's the one with the Canadian and American drivers. And a dry night. So often seems to rain at Le Mans in the night, but not this time. Of course, this is when tiredness starts to seek in, and Thierry Boutsen there shaking the hand of Max Velti, and I think Max is saying, you go off and have a little sleep in your caravan, Thierry. Well, here's the WR, the little cars which had promised so much but had been besieged with problems early on, and had dropped right near the back of the field, but now making up for lost time. Rather difficult to get out of that central seater car. And underneath there is a single-seater style chassis. Well, there you see the fine pits, and there you see the sun rising in the morning. Time to clean your teeth. Time for the little red squirrels. Don't see too many of those to hop off the race course. Well, the night had been dominated by Japan, by the two Toyotas, but after 15 hours there'd been a change. There in 7th place you see the Derek Bell car, the Golf Porsche, that had had problems with its rear lights. And then you see Dodge Viper up in 14th place. That's the Justin Bell René Arnoux car going nice and strongly. There it goes under our picture. But the leader, the Irvine Martini Krosnoff car. Martini and Krosnoff now racing in Formula 3000 in Japan, where Eddie Irvine made his name. And listening to the radio is essential when you want to keep in touch with the 24 hours. So, into the second half of the race, it appeared that Toyota had the upper hand, but Porsche was still chasing hard, and if Toyota slipped, then Porsche would be there. The Cougar Challenge had started to fade, and impressively, one of the two front-engined Nissans 300 ZXs had moved all the way up into 5th place. Problem there for that tile-beclad Venturi. Maybe it's run out of fuel, and the driver forgetting to connect his headset. And there's a few racing drivers who've had the ignominy of doing that on camera before. And maybe it's wondering what to do. Probably talking to the pits, in fact, about the problem. Through the night, the three Hondas had all had problems. Two had had gearbox changes, but come the morning, they were sounding good. And certainly this car being driven absolutely on the limit. So, Toyota, two Porsches. And here we see the lead Toyota coming up behind another Venturi with the V6 Peugeot engine and almost collecting, having to go out very wide indeed. Look at the flag marshal waving to that Venturi. Look in your mirrors, pal, get out of the way. The race leader's coming past you. And I guess the guy was just half asleep. Meanwhile, back at the wheel of the Honda, I think it's Gachot at the wheel, Bertrand Gachot, Luxembourg born. Lived in Britain for a while, sometimes claims Belgian nationality. True international gentleman. And down the gearbox. Gearbox was given so many problems, and through the Ford chicane, just prior to the pits complex. See all the tyres painted in the AC de l'Ouest blue and yellow colour scheme. And then down the straight, and then the very fast right-hander, and here in the Bugatti pit. And problems for Bugatti, a turbo change required, and this car had gone in the night up to a sensational 10th place overall. Now here is the number 54 Porsche, and the Swiss lady driver there looping the loop. That's Lilian Breiner. She'd done it a couple of times in the night, actually. Mother of two. But that car had been going extremely well, and that was now in the top 10. And here is the rumbling Dodge Viper. Chrysler Corporation had said that they didn't want to support this project, but are apparently coming to Le Mans next year with an open jet-powered car with a very special ultra-modern flywheel, which apparently winds up when the car brakes. News of that filtering out at the Detroit Motor Show earlier. But certainly a lot of fans for the Dodge Viper supercar. And meanwhile, the number 35 car of Hans Stuck and Danny Sullivan in second place. Meanwhile, problems here. And this is the car that, of course, got in the way of the leading Eddie Irvine, Ara Martini, Jeff Krosnoff Toyota. And you see it did actually touch and got spun by the Toyota. Well, I'm afraid you deserve that. And just look at the black marks it left. It went spinning off, and that must have given the guy a real fright. Get a lot of different varieties of drivers in this, from the, what I have to call virtually amateur playboys, to the Grand Prix hard chargers. Just a quick view there, one of the first views we've had of that superb number 76 Nissan, now running up in fourth place. The Cunningham Racing Team entry, Steve Millen, Johnny O'Connell, John Morton. Three Americans there doing a great job all through the race. That car winning the Daytona 24 Hours, and speculation it might even win this race, but just not having quite the pace. But superb to see a front-engine car up there so well, this IMSA spec car. An exciting moment there for it, very nearly being taken off by the Cougar, and the flag marshals doing their job well again. As it came round to midday at Le Mans with just 4 hours to go, this car was still in problems, but the number one car was still leading. And there, well, look at that. He obviously did a good job to get it back after the problem, so congratulations. And oh yes, all very emotive in the pits there. And problems there for the number 35 car, the Hans Stuck, Danny Sullivan, Thierry Boutsen car in second place. And, well, it looks to me as if a rear wishbone has broken. And here's Thierry Boutsen at the wheel of this car, which was still putting the pressure on the number one car. Look, coming in that corner white, bang on the curb. And there, that very moment, you see the rear wishbone break. The car gets totally out of shape. Thierry Boutsen tries to collect it up. He's got a long way to go back to the pits. See the wheel at an absolutely crazy angle. And just able to limp the car around and hardly in control of it. Look at it, snaking there. Thierry Boutsen fighting to regain the control of the car at 40 miles an hour. And here he finally comes into the pit, and that's a big blow. Any chance that that car had of stealing the lead off the lead Toyota, gone. The number 4 Cougar, which had led in the night, that also having problems, which mainly with the brakes, which led it to really drop back into 4th place, and used 2 of the Derek Bell, Donovan, Lassig car. That now up in the top 6 again, but of course hampered by the various pit stops in the night. Now here you see the Porsche crew, very efficient indeed, taking the bodywork off. They know that the wishbone's gone, they had one at the ready. Boots in there describing the problem to Hans Stuck, and the very big moment, and the hands say it all. Whoop, off it went. Just look at that again. You see, Thierry really making a bit of a mistake there, banging it up on the curb, but you wouldn't expect a wishbone to break at that sort of impact. But no question about it, it did, and we saw it happen right there on camera. And so the team here from Stuttgart changing as Thierry watches. Man who won 3 Grand Prix for the Williams team, drove also for Benetton, for Ligier, and last year for Jordan, before deciding to hang up his helmet. Man who's just become a father for a 2nd time, incidentally. So there the all Japanese driven Kramer Porsche NXS, and I believe that this is Takahashi, and him having gearbox problems. Look at that. Good in-car shots there. Komitsu Takahashi, very experienced Japanese driver, comes over the rise on the Mulsanne straight, and that car running now down about 18th spot. Meanwhile, here the number 4 says Hansgar, but it should say Ansgar, the Swede, and there he is waiting to get in the car, take over from his compatriot George Fouché. They've driven together for years and years now, and often share a car in Japan, the Trust team. And here is Jürgen Lassig this time at the wheel of the superb Golf Porsche. Hardly see her for the windscreen there, and have to say that Jürgen Lassig and Robin Donovan not putting in the same kind of lap times as Derek Bell, who has made it quite clear that this is his last Le Mans, and overtaking the Bugatti. Good to see that that car is going again. Flashes a light at his pit, probably says I'll be in next time. And the team have already told us that Derek Bell will drive the final quarter of an hour session, and this car still with a chance of catching the 5th place car, so they've still got everything to play for. And what a close Le Mans it has been. Yes, close indeed. Look, after 252 laps, just a lap separates the lead Toyota, the Irvine car, from the lead Porsche. And there you see the Nissan still going very strongly, and of course another key player in this race, the number 4 Toyota. Chance of victory there gone. Bob Wallach saying in the middle of the night, if it's to be, it will happen. If not, well, that's the way it's going to be. Nothing I can do about it. Just drive the car as quick as I can. Problems holding them up. Just see their pit briefly as he blasts past the front-engined Nissan, the IMSA GT car. And the 2 Toyotas running close together. Japan has a great love affair with Le Mans. Many Japanese drivers coming here, Japanese teams. They see it as the greatest challenge in motor racing. And for Toyota, of course, it's that prize which they've yearned after for some 8 years and still haven't quite achieved. They've come close, they haven't quite made it. This is looking like the year, but at Le Mans, of course, it's never over until the end. Driving down into that chicane, and that's the number 1 car, the lead car, looking for a way around the number 75 machine, the American-driven Nissan, and exercising discretion, and that's what you need at Le Mans. He's got a lead of just over a lap. Meanwhile, Bob Wallach waiting in the pits there for the number 4 car to come in. Bob Wallach, so experienced, always gives his best. And he knows now that this year at least, no chance of victory. Ansgar hops out, the lanky Swede. That car lying in 5th spot at the moment, just behind the Nissan. Nissan have been having a fantastic run.
Spectacular racing from South Africa in the Global Touring Cars Championship. The East London round is on Motorsport TV. The legendary Tony Bou tops the Trial GP Championship heading to the France round in Oran. Watch the Spaniard and his rivals on Motorsport TV. After back-to-back wins in Portugal and Italy, Thierry Neuville boasts a 27-point lead over defending champion Sébastien Ogier heading to Finland. Find out if the Belgian driving for Hyundai can taste victory again by tuning into WRC daily highlights from all 3 days in Finland on Motorsport TV.
But here is the lead car. A buffer of just over a lap, but still being pressed hard by the number 36 Porsche. The number 35 car, of course, having that problem with the broken wishbone. Meanwhile, the Dodge Viper still going well. This is the second of the two cars, one bright orange, one bright yellow. And Francois Migaud climbing into the car, talks to Philippe Gache, Migaud man who raced for BRM, some 20 years ago, very experienced driver. And here is that Nissan coming in, was in 4th place, and problems there. Look at those flames coming out of the turbo. And it seems engine problems for the sole surviving Nissan. The team rush up. And just look at those flames. Extinguishers to the ready, and obviously a big problem. John Morton was waiting to get into the car. It is Steve Millen at the wheel. Steve Millen, I called him American because he is based in the States and has been for many years, but is originally from New Zealand. Just see that flame again. Well, you can almost say it's barbecue time. But that indicating a major problem, perhaps a broken camshaft. Something like that would produce that effect. And neat fuel going through the engine into the exhaust pipe and then igniting, giving us that little display there. But the race now in its final 2 hours, and confirmation that there was a broken camshaft on the Nissan, yet the crew are changing it, and they reckon they can do it in under 20 minutes. So that should drop that car down to 5th place. But meanwhile, this a useful, but not by Le Mans standards at all, long lead by the number 1 car. It's pulling off! A problem! A problem for the leading car. Now what can that be? Jeff Krosnoff, it is, at the wheel. Dear, look at that garage. They just can't believe it. There, the team management, they cannot believe what's happened to them. The car has pulled off right outside the pits. Whatever it is, it'll have to limp round if Krosnoff can fix it. Krosnoff talking on the radio, marshals running up, seemed to be going fine, and then it just ground to a halt. Now, usually when it's something like that, it's either an ignition problem or a gearbox problem. Krosnoff going to the back of the car and seems to know what it is. Appears that he's actually doing something to the gearbox, maybe the gear linkage. And Krosnoff, whatever it's done, he's fixed something. Well, I would assume, therefore, that it wasn't anything to do with the engine. It is probable that Krosnoff has been able to jam the car in gear, and that means that he'll be able to limp round, but almost certain will lose his lead. Just 90 minutes to go now before the end of the race. It looks as if Toyota, after all their hard trying, after 8 years, had got this race in the bag. There, the number 36 Porsche coming out of the pits, the fat car. And, well, it has a chance of unlapping itself. And, well, I don't know what that signal means, but I know what the face means. It has disappointment written all over it. And coming into the pits, the car which looks as if it will inherit the lead. So, the Yannick Dalmas, Hurley Hayward, Mauro Baldi car. And there you see Mauro Baldi getting in, Yannick Dalmas getting out, and Hurley Haywood back in the pits. He's won Le Mans twice before, once at his first attempt way back in 1977. Off they go, chasing after the Toyota, and the Toyota #1 car comes into the pits. And surely it will lose the lead here. Eddie Irvine in the bright orange helmet. Oh, listen to Krosnoff shouting. Krosnoff obviously disappointed. And of course, that car is still technically in the lead, but all the time in the inset, that Porsche is closing up on it. Just half a lap now, and the lead will change. And indeed, there you see the broken gear linkage. Just caught that black rod. If you saw the black rod going across the top of the engine, that was the broken gear linkage, and that is the problem. And with just an hour and a half to go, sensation at Le Mans, the lead changes, and into the lead, the Porsche 962 GT of Mauro Baldi, Yannick Dalmas and Hurley Haywood. Well, how long will this pit stop take? It must be agonising for the drivers. They had led the race from the 14th hour. So this, the new leader. And there is a possibility that the second Porsche, the Stuck Sullivan Boutsen car, there it is, will move into second place. And the sole surviving Courage there now. In 7th place, Ricky Evans and Olzik. So it's been a lot more of changing fortunes, and to a cheer from the crowd, out goes that Toyota. Stricken there with victory in sight, and it is in 3rd place, but has a fighting chance of still taking 2nd place. Eddie Irvine is the man at the wheel. Oh, Danny Sullivan there discussing the prospects. Danny Sullivan knows that his car is in 2nd place at the moment. Here is the new leader, the number 36 car. There is Yannick. Could Yannick win this race for a 2nd time? Well, an hour to go, that's all it will take. Their confirmation of the lead of 1 lap. And the 2 Porsches now in front of the 2 Toyotas, and then the Nissan, and then the Derek Bell Golf Porsche in 6th spot. But Eddie Irvine really charging. And here looking to unlap himself, and indeed he passes the car, which looks as if it is destined for victory. Baldi, Dalmas, Haywood, the controversial so-called GT car. And talking of GT cars, in the GT2 category, that Corvette we saw earlier ran out of fuel, was refueled illegally and disqualified from the race. So now 911 RSR of Dupuis, Pareja and Palau, 2 Spanish drivers and a Frenchman. And drama here. What is the problem? Somebody is in the tyre wall. Here is the Bugatti passing the Viper. Christian Bouchot at the wheel. And look at that, just suddenly turned sharp left. And that Viper, so lucky not to collect it. And it looks as if it's going into the wall. And bang, hard into the wall. Bits fly off. Well, that car had lost a lot of time with the turbos, and it looks maybe there's some oil on the back tyre. Maybe another turbo had blown. Didn't see any smoke from it. We caught the incident a little bit late, and revolving round and round. And in the last hour, big disappointment for the Bugatti, because it seems to me that that car will definitely not restart. Well, a late driver change for the lead car. Comes into the pits. This is the final pit stop now. And Yannick Dalmas going to take over the car for the final stint. And a very quick one, what they call a splash and dash. Meanwhile, also going out of the pits after their final pit stop is the Toyota. Eddie Irvine still at the wheel, and I think this last 40 minutes or so is going to see a real Grand Prix out there, because Eddie Irvine really wants that second place. Again, we see the fuel flying. That car in the lead. Thierry Boutsen at the wheel of the second place Porsche. Max Welti there. And just look how close they are now. That is the gap between second and third position after almost 24 hours of racing in this stupendous Le Mans. Listen to the crowd. -4 seconds, they're saying to Eddie Irvine. Yes, you can do it. You can catch Thierry Boutsen, but will second place be any consolation for the drivers who led this race for so long? And coming to the finish now, and look, oh, dearie me. Well, of course, those cars are crawling. They don't want to do another lap. I'm very nearly collected by these two racing for second place. Normally, at the end of a Le Mans like this, you can crawl round, no problem. But that was so close, and I believe, yes, Eddie Irvine has got past. Eddie Irvine is in second place. The Irishman, the Northern Irishman, driving his heart out, but the car which is just now romping towards the checkered flag, the Yost Run Porsche, but a factory car coming to the flag. Hurley Hayward, Mauro Baldi, Yannick Dalmas. Mauro Baldi not won this race before. The checkered flag goes down and Porsche win Le Mans for the first time in 7 years. And second place, there's the Toyota team management, and still this battle continues. And Thierry Boutsen trying to see if he can find a way round. And look, cars everywhere. This is very dangerous indeed. And they should be allowed to race to the flag, but they can't. And as Derek Bell comes home to take sixth place, the flag marshals very nearly mown down. They cross the line. And yes, indeed, the Toyota, the #1 car, does finish second. And the Porsche finishes third. Oh, what a fantastic end. Max Welti there in tears. And Hurley Hayward dons the garlands. There's Mauro Baldi, his first victory in Le Mans, a former world sports car champion. Yannick Dalmas, and they're the trio who was so cruelly robbed of victory. Jeff Krosnoff, he can raise a smile. Krosnoff fixed the car. Mauro Martini just on your far left there. And, well, the emotion of a long 24-hour race, it's all worth it for Porsche team manager Max Welti and for the drivers. But you have to feel sorry for Toyota. They came so near, yet so far, and their hands stuck. Thierry Boutsen finishing third. Danny Sullivan also enjoying that success. But a superb Le Mans, a race to remember, one of the closest finishes for years. We'd seen something like 6 different leaders, and just to round out the results, in 4th place the Volek Ansgar Fouché, the second of the Toyotas. In 5th place the Millen O'Connell Morton Nissan winning the IMSA class. In 6th place Bell, Donovan and Lassick in their Kramer Porsche, and the GT2 category won by Dupuis, Pereira and Palau in their Porsche 911. But most definitely a Le Mans to remember. 1994, a vintage year on the Sarthe.
This weekend, standouts on Motorsport TV. The spectacular adventure that is the Silkway Rally. The Global Touring Cars Championship from East London, South Africa. And top open-wheel racing in the Formula 4 United States Championship. That's Saturday, July the 21st and Sunday, July the 22nd on Motorsport TV. At Motorsport TV, we love bringing you the very best national series. The MSA British Rallycross Championship from Pembrey. Spectacular accidents from the world of rallying in Rally Havoc 2 on Motorsport TV.
Carlos Monteverdi leading the field around to the rolling start of this race, but like all the other cars, well, as many of the 76 or so, yes, I did say 76, to get as close as they can so that we can have proper 2x2 formation without those at the back losing out too much.
Armhouse the cockpit for Matt Parsons in the number 60 car. That's a Porsche 356A Speedster. Not quite sure what he was indicating, maybe saying thank you to somebody for letting him get by to try and form up in position. That car will start in 39th place, 40th place in fact, exactly halfway down the 40 rows of the grid. You can see there cars trying to sort themselves out and position. I think I should be in front of that Austin Healey, but I'm not sure, so I'll maybe just stay here.
Yes, give or take.
Birdcage, Ferrari 250, TR4s, Morgans, Listers, Austin Healey's, Lotuses,
Corvettes.
Oh dear Lord, just every different kind of way of slicing the sports car theme. Here's another one, a Saab 93. Well, maybe not quite the sports car. Saab Sonnet might be a little later 60s version, but that's the two-stroke Saab. And yes, that's exactly why it sounds like a racing motorcycle, because it is a two-stroke engine.
And I love the fact you look out down the pit lane, drivers and team chiefs from other races that are happening later, just as happy looking at cars in the sister races, if you will. But this is the sharp end of the field. The Lister and the Tagera on the front row. The second row, you've got a Lotus and an Aston Martin, a Ferrari on row 3, more variety, and an Austin Healey down on row 4. All the shapes and sizes mixed up in this fantastic melting pot here at the Mall. Melting pot being the operative term here this weekend.
Definitely. And those who are currently trying to cool down a little bit before they head back out into action, enjoying a bit of late afternoon sunshine, but it is still absolutely sweltering. Don't be misled by how relaxed they look. It is very, very hot indeed in the pit lane.
It is all the concrete, just looking at the peer list down, but all the drivers now focus on what they're going to do when they come out of the final corner after the 2 chicanes. They've just left the end of the Porsche curves. You can see yet more activity up in the sky, but it's really what's going to happen down on terra firma in the next 30 seconds that's going to count, because those at the front end, super competitive. Carlos Monteverdi on the front row, James Cottingham alongside. They will be desperate to be first into the Dunlop curves, and in behind the little Lotus with Roger Wills, I fancy he's thinking about having a crack.
So where is James Cottingham? He's not alongside Carlos Monteverdi where he should be. He's alongside the DB4 GT of Tom Alexander, and Roger Wills in the Lotus is further back. So Tom Alexander, the white DB4 GT, out of position as we get ready to start. The bread van moves up, Project 212, that pale green Aston Martin. The Rogues are definitely not in 2x2 formation, but are they given the go anyway? Yes, they are. So it is Carlos Monteverde in the dark car, number 20, the Lister Jag Costin, that leads the charge to the first corner. The Lotus 11s go either side, or the 11 and the 15 go either side of the bread van. And the DB4 GT Zagato is in second spot. 1960 car Tom Alexander making a good run up into the Dunlop chicane. Now the first dozen are through. There's only about another 75 cars to follow them before they sweep down into the S's.
Hold the shot, Martin, and we will just talk you through, but fantastic starts from the Lotuses. And I think that Tom Alexander DB4 was about 1 millimetre behind Cottingham on the start-finish line. Therefore, he was behind him. That must be his thinking, but Cottingham trying to fight his way back. Alexander into the lead of the race, will have run wide, and thank you very much. Row 1 goes back ahead of row 2.
Go hard, go early is Tom Alexander's motto here. Now, who's got the speed in the straight line? Again, the dark car number 20, Carlos Monteverde, side by side.
Cottingham sits so much lower, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You think them side by side in the paddock, they look as though they're the same size, but number 20 from pole position, Carlos Monteverde, now back in front, but I fancy 68 is going to get his nose up at the inside, and don't forget, no, he's not. Yeah. He's a bit further back. He's not so good on the brakes. They're approaching the first chicane, not bothering a great deal with braking, but he's got more weight to pair down. It's getting Tom Alexander the inside, and don't forget, no, he's not. Yeah. He's a bit further back. He's not so good on the brakes. They're approaching the first chicane, not bothering a great deal with braking, but he's got more weight to pair down. It's getting Tom Alexander the inside, and don't forget, no, he's not. Yeah. He's a bit further back. He's not so good on the brakes. They're approaching the first chicane, not bothering a great deal with braking, but he's got more weight to pair down. It's getting Tom Alexander the inside, and don't forget, no, he's not. Yeah. He's a bit further back. He's not so good on the brakes. They're approaching the first chicane, not bothering a great deal with braking, but he's got more weight to pair down. It's getting Tom Alexander the inside, and don't forget, no, he's not. Yeah. He's a bit further back. He's not so good on the brakes. They're approaching the first chicane, not bothering a great deal with braking, but he's got more weight to pair down. It's getting Tom Alexander the inside, and don't forget, no, he's not. Yeah. He's a bit further back. He's not
left there with a rear end lockup.
It's not braking, it's snaking.
Yeah. Oh, and Roger Wills on the lock stops as he chases the throttle in the Lotus 15, driving hard off the sink on the Mulsanne. Project 212, that light green Aston Martin ahead of the bread van, and that is that red Ferrari with that distinctive double opening at the front and the big long aerodynamic rear end. And talking of long aero rear ends, that's what the Lister Jag has got. Lister Costin in second place now behind Roger Wills, our race leader.
Very bold start from Roger Wills, putting his little Lotus up to the front, and I don't know for how many laps Tom Alexander's going to keep any heat in his tyres or any tyre life in his tyres. He's chasing so hard in that DB4 GT, which looks wholly out of place against these much, much smaller cars around him, but under braking, you see the Aston Martin going one way and another, but a much better poised, much lighter car is the Lotus 15, leading the race in the hands of Kiwi Roger Wills, such a historic racing aficionado. There are the top 6 cars, but then there's a huge gap back to 7th place. 7th place at the moment, I think, is the Niblaus Welsh number 23. We have appear to have lost Cottingham from that front row. Yeah. You were absolutely spot on.
He didn't start on the front row. He didn't come round with Carlos Monteverde, who's under pressure again. Monteverde locking up twice under braking. And again, the Aston Martin. I mean, what a different kind of car it is from the Lister, which is a purpose-built Le Mans-style racer. And James Cottingham and Max Girado's car has been shown as being in the pit lane, or not on the track at least. Vincent Gay in the number 10 car, the 250 GT Berlinetta. I'm not surprised that that didn't start, because I saw that coughing a big cloud of smoke out in practice yesterday. But there's some of the half-dozen cars that have a grid spot that weren't on the grid. So it looks as though the James Cottingham and Max Girardo car that should have been on the half-dozen cars, Pajero Jaguar, has not made it to the start of the race. That here, well, we've talked about it at every grid so far, and we will do until we're sick of saying it ourselves. Whatever position you are in, you have got to battle for it, and for the one in front and for the one behind. The Morgan cutting the nose of the 61 car, almost contact as they went through Arnage.
And it was a classic situation, Martin, where one overtaking manoeuvre loses momentum for one of the drivers who suddenly lose 2 or 3 places. TVR tucked in behind. But don't forget, it's not just about this race. Still got 38 and a bit minutes remaining. We've got 2 more races. There has to be an element of caution. You do not want to damage your car, because overall glory will only come at the end of the 3rd race tomorrow afternoon. Conditions absolutely fantastic here at Le Mans. The racing at the front, sharp end. Well, not good at all for Monteverdi. He dropped from the lead of the race back to second, back to third towards the end of this lap, and he's limping in. Should be sharing his pole starting Lister Costin with Gary Pearson, but this way too early for a pit stop. So concern for Monteverdi, and that means that Roger Wills is under less pressure as he pulls clear of Tom Alexander. It's, of course, a Lotus ahead of the much larger Aston Martin. The number 20, Lister Costin, time to talk to the mechanic, but not to go racing. Number 6, Maserati Birdcage, starting to pick its way up the order. Lights ablaze, that's Fierro.
Yeah, Guillermo Fierro, who shares with Steve Hart in that 1960 Tipo 61 Maserati, named the Birdcage because as you look inside that big plastic screen, you can see the lattice work of fine tubes that make up the tube frame chassis, multiply braced. And didn't take long for it to acquire that moniker, did it? Right in front, car number 1, and that is Stefan Vimes, Ludwig Caron in their Austin Healey 3000 Mark 1. Again, 1960 vintage.
Bottom end of the top 10, so fierce fighting, we know, right at the front of the top end.
Cars are the same age and totally different in any imaginable way. Austin Healey built in Warwick in initially limited numbers, based with Austin mechanicals from very humble saloons. The Maserati using a derivation of its then Formula 1 engine with the most exotic bodywork and chassis. You know, but again, handcrafted like the Austin Healeys were. The early Healeys were very much hand-built at Cape Works in Warwick. And
what a great sight, though. Oh, there's Gary Pearson. He won't be taking over from Carlos Monteverdi. It's the number 20 car being packed up. In fact, it almost looks like he was the one that started the race rather than Carlos.
I think he might have been, actually.
Ergo, that probably explains, because I wasn't too sure that Carlos would have had time, having done the previous race, to get across to the infield, to get the car to trickle round.
Although Carlos did do the first stint, we think, in the other race as well. But again, that's only what it said on the grid sheet. So
yeah, no, I take that into account. So we've got some Japanese racers here in all sorts of vehicles. Austin Healey's a particular favourite this year, but wonderful to see this Fierro's Maserati Birdcage, so tropical looking, but braking hard, but again, super nimble. Not exactly a car from a humble background, quite the reverse, but gaining more position. Certainly that started somewhere down about 15th on the grid, and going forward, which in racing terminology is a good thing.
Yeah, past another of the Austin Healeys. That's a 3000 Mark 1 it went by. Of course, the Austin Healey's not only successful in racing, but especially successful as factory rally cars. The number 6 car moving up the order. I think that was the number 23 Austin Healey that it was going by. It's a Niblos Belk car. It replaces, that was a late replacement for a Sunbeam Alpine. And here is one of our 3 Corvette C1s. This car dates back to 1960. It was the one we had the onboard lap with earlier, the number 26 machine. So this is a replica of a car that would have raced in period. Tributes to the Briggs Cunningham run Corvette that raced here in 1960, driven by Edwin Stuckey and Ludwig Cholet.
Now, battle for the lead has closed right up because Tom Alexander, or the Alexander Wilmot Aston Martin, has not just caught but gone past Roger Wills. Has Roger got a problem in the Lotus 15, but one white car swaps another? Couldn't be more different in shape. One decided to take the corner on the track, and the other decided he would have a bit of the outfield as well. So the Aston Martin now into the lead of this race. Still just under 35 minutes remaining. Wonderful bridge over the circuit. It's not made of bricks. This was put up this year to celebrate 70 years of Porsche.
I'd love to know...
the back of the main grandstand, decked in the same decals as well.
I'd love to know the weight difference alone between the Aston and the Lotus that gives chase. Project 212 Aston Martin disappears under the Dunlop Bridge in the battle for 4th place. For 3rd place, just behind, is the Ferrari bread van. And they go by the number 52 Deutsche Bonnet with its Panhard twin-cylinder engine. And again, busy hands. We saw this car racing in the snow, Bruce, didn't we, at the members' meeting at Goodwood a few months ago, and that was busy hands for a very different reason. Here the grip is low, relatively low, because of the high speed, but also because of the high heat of the traffic, of the road in front.
the approach of Lucas Halusa in the Ferrari bread van has been very, very good news for James Wood, because it's taken the Project Aston Martin off his tail. Now the Project Aston Martin, Wolfgang Friedrichs, again, we mentioned Goodwood, he's had great success. His bonnet is just rising up very slightly. That will be a distraction for him, but now maybe that's why he's backed off a tiny little bit. Cars starting to come into the pits, and I think he'll be coming in very soon. But for Wolfgang Friedrichs, who has just dropped down to 5th place, he's handing over to himself. He's not one who's having a driver change, but he still has to have the pit stop.
Yeah, Lucas Halusa drives through inside the chicane into 4th place, so he moves back up to 4th. As you say, Little Lotus right in front, the number 22 car, just trying to escape. Here comes Lucas, sends it long and early down the inside. You see the glance in the mirrors from the Aston. Yeah, know you're coming. Door was open. You got me fair and square. Manfred Freisinger, man who is very, very familiar with modern Porsches. It's the car he's bought and restored and is now racing himself. It was a late entry on the reserve list, but Manfred Freisinger qualified that car very firmly in the top 20. And just getting it a little bit crossed up and bounced over the curbs, shake of the head as he got himself back underway.
Well, we've just been enjoying looking at one Juliet, the one from Japan, but this SZ number 35, Jean Brandenburg and Lucien Charles Nicolet pushed behind the barriers. So not all the cars making it to the finish of this race. Hopefully they can be repaired and take part in races 2 and 3 for these battery entries. So for a lot of the drivers, now is the time to put on their balaclavas as late as possible. It is still very hot down in the pits. Cars started to come in, little TVRs just flown in. Yes, oh, your balaclava was inside out. Let's change it round. There we are professional in this sport. But at the front end of the field, it's still the Alexander Wilmot Aston Martin DB4 GT, 18 seconds clear of Roger Wills. Roger Wills running in the Little Lotus, not that Little Lotus.
Battle here, this is just on the fringe of the top 20th and 21st place, the Morgan and the Lotus Elite. And in front of them, another Morgan, so another of the +4s. Now, we saw Morgans racing in the first group of cars as well. Those are flat rad pre-war Morgans. These have got the more rounded nose, which is still the current. I mean, you can buy a Morgan out of their factory in Malvern that looks exactly like that still today. It is no different. Still sliding pillar front suspension. It's only really slight detail changes and the variety of engines that they've used over the years. That Morgan +4, very much still a current car, as well as a, what we're now, half-century-old historic racer.
Yeah, I must confess, as a child, I even thought they were sort of off-period back then, but the fact if you told me that 40 years later they would still be producing very much the same thing, albeit slightly improved. Good to see the yellow flag area at turn 33 has been cleared. You can see the cars coming through the Porsche curves, the majority of them diving for the pits now, suddenly getting very busy. Cars at the back end of the field coming in, but those at the front end resisting it for now. But I think we may get our race leader coming in fairly soon. Tom Alexander going very well, but he'll be handing over to his good chum, long-standing race partner, Adrian Wilmot. I'm sure that they're very, very keen to see if they can take victory in this, the first of the 3 parts for the battery cars running between 1957 and 1961. In the top of the shot, you can just see the Aston Martins, the little Alfa Romeos come into the pit. Aston Martin going around one more time, just crossing the start-finish line now. Was 18 seconds clear. Now looks like it's going to be nearly 21 seconds over Roger Wills.
Well, this is one of 2 or 3 Zagato Alphas, and you saw the SVZ going by, the SV version of the Zagato. This is an SZ, so slightly less highly developed, but again still shares the 105 series platform. In comes the second place car. I wondered whether he'd come in now as well. Don't do the same as the leader. You're never going to catch them if you do that. In comes third, in comes fourth as well, in comes fifth. So second, third, fourth and fifth fly by our window. In has come the Lotus from second place. In has come the bread van Project 212 as well. So the leader remains out in the DB4, and that's an impressive job in the DB4, which is a big saloon car. Even in super lightweight mode, it's still a big old saloon car against purpose-built racing prototypes. That's an epically impressive drive. Driver change going on here.
That's Karina Lohmann, Laumann about to get in. James Wood hopping out. James trying to help out. Well, he better help out. It's his wife. Here, have a seat, my dear. And in it goes. But again, different sized people, different sides. And it's about getting comfortable. You've got to hang on in these cars, because around this circuit there's not just slow corners, but there are some corners where you get a lot of loading. So James Wood, ever the gentleman, hops in to help out Queenie. Oh dear, suddenly not a good moment for the Alfa Romeos. And this is the one that had a problem before.
Yeah.
Kojima.
So this is the SVZ. And we just saw him going by the pits, and unfortunately if he'd come in, maybe they would have been able to sort the problem. The bread van having a quick tyre pressure adjustment.
Lucas Halusa staying on board the bread van, often shares that with German racer Claudia Hürtgen, who goes very well over the years. Or
is he? Because he's shown as being down with Martin Halusa, so I'm not sure whether he stayed in or not. We've got no way of telling, unfortunately, unless we actually see the change. It didn't really look as though there was a driver door being shut, but then they may have done that already.
Well, in fact, on the timing screens, it only showed one name. It showed his Christian name. It didn't say Halusa. So
yes, that's very true.
We'll run that guess, but the story is really the fact that the lead Aston Martin has stayed out on the track for a further lap before making a pit stop. And Tom Alexander and Adrian Wilmot have been racing that car for a very long time now. And in terms of the development to getting it right for historic racing, you think it's very much on point at the moment. Vast majority of the cars have now made their pit stops. It's really, in fact, up to second place by not making a pit stop is the number 6 car that we've seen driven so well. It's the Maserati Birdcage. Guillermo Fierro will be handing it over to Steve Hart.
This Corvette C1 started on row 22 of the grid, so it was 44th or 43rd because we're missing James Cottingham at the start, but on the 22nd row of the grid. Now moving itself up towards the top 20. Now where has he got to so far? I've lost him on the timing screen. Here's the bread van, here's Project 212. So
battle rejoined.
Yeah,
this is how they were before the pit stops, and they're very close to the tail of Roger Wills' car that's now in the hands of John Clark.
Yeah, but not that close. And the Aston Martin and the Ferrari, the Aston, again, they obviously weren't watching on the TV or can't briefly fix the problem with that leading edge of the Aston's bonnet. I would have thought a bit of gaffer tape at the very least across the front would have stopped the air getting in. There's the potential for danger if it lifted off. The hinges are at the front. The little twist fasteners are in front of the windscreen at the rear that hold the rear down, so it tips forward, so it shouldn't fly off, but shouldn't and isn't going to. My classic car ownership tells me are not necessarily the same thing. Tim Roller nods in agreement, a man who has had more than his fair share of older car experience. No, I wouldn't say loose bonnet. No. He's probably not been hit on the head by a loose bonnet that he forgot to fit, and I have.
Well, change of what will effectively be for second place, because suddenly the Project 212 Aston Martin and the Ferrari bread van have both deposed. It's David Clark, not John Clark, who's taken over from Roger Wills. Roger will be racing, of course, with the silver fern of New Zealand on the side of the helmet, the blue helmet there of David Clark, who will settle down now, try and get back past that Morgan, which is out of sync because of the pit stop sequence. He's got to try, if he wants to get to the podium, to stay with the red Ferrari bread van and the green Aston Martin Project car.
Right, now that Morgan, in fact, is out of position, but in the top 10. That's Keith Arles in the number 28 car. He's going very well indeed. He is currently 6th.
But
these guys on their outlaps have already gone back by him. There you can see the little two-stroke Saab ring-dinging its way around the circuit. But, you know, here's the Aston Martin with its straight 6, the Ferrari with the bellowing V12, and a ring-ding-ding-ding-ding-ding-ding-ding of a two-stroke motorcycle racer coming from a big bulbous Saab saloon. I mean, you just can't imagine anywhere else other than sports car racing where you just get that variety. Just remarkable.
Always the beauty of sports car racing. So let's just run through who is where in the race. Alexander and Wilmot car has now come into the pits from the lead, and it should be Tom Alexander handing over to Adrian Wilmot, waiting for the number 6 car, which was a minute and a bit back, but really that isn't in the mix. The cars we're looking at now are in the mix, effectively second and third. The 21 Aston Martin Project car 212, and tucked in behind the Ferrari bread van, made specifically for racing with that wonderful chopped off tail.
Long aerodynamic tail and the cam rear end to try and break the turbulence. You can see Wolfgang Friedrichs, he was one of the drivers with the shades on. Now, actually, as they're coming into Indianapolis and Arnage, I think the sun is low enough behind the trees that they've not got that problem. Of course, they haven't been racing these cars as you would have been in the classic race, in the 24-hour race, for sort of 5 or 6 hours already. They're not covered in bug splat, so it's a little easier to see. Lotus battle there for position, and our Corvette C1, or one of our 3 Corvette C1s, makes its pits into the track away with gloves to try and cool his hands and his gloves down. Fly his gloves out, cool his hands down. You can imagine that with that, 350 horsepower furnace in front of him, that's not at all a cool car. Not in temperature terms, at any rate.
Yes, in every other term possible. It's a very, very cool car. So the number 6 Maserati Birdcage leads the race with Guillermo Fierro at board, but he owes us a pit stop. That will see him drop down to around the tail end of the top 10 and expect the Aston Martin, which has rejoined, Tom Alexander handed over to Adrian Wilmot to go back into the lead of the race. Had a good advantage, but the race in itself is the race between the Ferrari bedvan, number 16 Luca Salusa and number 21 Wolfgang Friedrichs, the German, such an aficionado of the Aston Martin mark, and he's achieved some top results. But come second or third, it matters not too much to them. It's the fact they're having a cracking race. But Luca Salusa, having got past, is now starting to stretch his legs. And can Wolfgang Friedrichs tuck in behind and stay with him? Or will the Ferrari Breadvan continue to stretch away? Let's see over the remaining 15 and a bit minutes in this race. But both of them know they've got to do one thing. If they want glory, they've got to hunt down and catch the race-leading DB4 GT.
Spectacular racing from South Africa in the Global Touring Cars Championship. The East London round is on Motorsport TV. The legendary Tony Bou tops the Trial GP Championship heading to the France round in Oran. Watch the Spaniard and his rivals on Motorsport TV. After back-to-back wins in Portugal and Italy, Thierry Neuville boasts a 27-point lead over defending champion Sébastien Ogier heading to Finland. Find out if the Belgian driving for Hyundai can taste victory again by tuning into WRC daily highlights from all 3 days in Finland on Motorsport TV.
The battle for second place. The 16 Luca Salusa Ferrari Breadvan has just passed Wolfgang Friedrichs' Project Aston Martin car. They're listed as 3rd and 4th positions, but the Maserati Birdcage that's leading the race, the number 6 car, has yet to make its pit stop. So effectively this is the battle for 2nd and 3rd. But the car they're hoping they can catch, but they are some distance behind, 35 seconds. So it's just gone down to 31 seconds behind Adrian Wilmot, who's taken over in the race-leading Aston Martin DB4 GT, the number 53 car that's had so many years of racing in the hands of Alexander Wilmot, and that experience is really starting to show. Both quick drivers, but knowledge of the car, knowledge of the Le Mans circuit really do pay dividends.
Look at the Aston Martin pulling alongside the Ferrari. 2 very different looking cars, again purpose-made for their jobs. The Ferrari designed for the long, fast circuit here at Le Mans. The Aston Martin really much more at home somewhere perhaps like Goodwood, where it had some of its best racing successes, but continued development has turned the Project Aston